There's another team that really has my interest, and that is the Seattle Storm. And while they don't necessarily have a big free agent, one of their star players, their franchise star, requested a trade, and that's Jewell Loyd. And so there had been a lot going on with Seattle. We know they went through an investigation. There were no findings from the investigation. But that investigation led us to learn that there might have been some issues this year in Seattle. We don't know the full extent of them, but I'm imagining whatever went on there is what prompted Jewell Loyd to request a trade from the team that we all have known her on all this time. And so again, we've been talking about free agency all day, and I just keep saying, I can't imagine some of these players on other teams. And it's the same for Jewell Loyd. I cannot imagine her on another team, but it sounds like she might be. She requested a trade, and during Unrivaled media availability, she chose not to be so forthcoming. She said she's focused on Unrivaled, and then we'll see what happens. So in her name, of course, like, you have to imagine, we talked about the Aces earlier. If they have to come off of a player like Kelsey Plum, Jewell Loyd would be, I think, a somewhat seamless fit, you'd think or hope, to maybe go into that role. She has experience playing with the rest of their core from the Olympics. I know when I spoke to them right before the Olympics, both Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray, and ironically, even Kelsey Plum, said Jewell Loyd was the player they were most looking forward to playing with in the Olympics. So that's interesting. And then on top of that, you know, she's also been linked to a team like Chicago because she's from that area. So I don't know, what do you think?
That's an interesting dynamic to me. What I will say is they do have one like free agent who is an unrestricted free agent, and that's Chiney Ogwumike, right? And I think that it's so funny that last year when we think about, everyone was saying, who won free agency? Who won free agency? And it was the Seattle Storm, because they were able to bring in Chiney Ogwumike and they were able to bring in Skylar Diggins-Smith. And we just knew that this team was going to be a team to continually click. And I think we kind of said the entire season, like, just wait until Seattle is able to, like, really get it together.
Neka?
Let's just wait. No, oh, excuse me. I said Chiney.
I
meant Neka.
I didn't. Listen,
Chiney, Neka, y'all know I love y'all dearly. There is no way I should ever get y'all confused. But yes, Neka Ogwumike.
We have free agency brain, guys. We have been talking about players all day.
Right. She was like, wait, Chiney in the league again? What are we doing? Neka Ogwumike. So yes, Neka is an unrestricted free agent for the Seattle Storm. And yes, again, to the point that, you know, we talked last year heavily about how good and how Seattle truly won the trade because of their connection with having Neka and having Skylar, Jewel, adding Gabby Williams back towards the end of the year. Ezzie Magbagor was playing phenomenally. It just felt like there was something that was off, right? And so after hearing about the, you know, Noel Quinn allegations of bullying and harassment and all of that stuff, the WNBA not finding anything, and then seeing Jewell Loyd request a trade, I think that speaks to so many different scenarios as to maybe why this team never really clicked, that there was just some internal things and so that builds the point of how attractive are you truly going to be in free agency, right? If you do lose Jewell Loyd, how much do you really think that the things that made you attractive before are going to make you attractive now? And I think that point can even be made as we looked at the expansion draft, right? Like, there was no selection from the Golden State Valkyries from Seattle. And so I think, to me, that's the biggest thing that we just kind of have to remember. Like, you want to put yourself in the best position to be attractive to free agencies. I mean, you talk about Chicago. That was one of the reasons that they supposedly fired Teresa Weatherspoon. Is she going to be able to attract free agents? You know what I mean? And so having a team that will be attractive to people to want to come here and want to stay here is going to be vitally important. And I think that's something Seattle certainly will need to figure out as we get closer and closer to an actual date.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be really interesting to see. Neka has talked in the past about the facilities in Seattle, the group that's there and management, and that was all really attractive to her. So I wonder if after one season she'd leave that. So, you know, I guess we'll see. Jewel, on the other hand, seems ready to go. I'm curious if Seattle's going to work with her and what they might get back in return for her. I mentioned, you know, a team potentially like Chicago that she could maybe.
Well, you know, Jewel, to make things fair to Jewel been there through everything, though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, she was drafted there. She, you know, won championships there. She saw Sue Bird leave. She saw Brianna Stewart leave. She certainly had to take over as the leader of the team. You know, her leadership style had to change a little bit. Everyone who knows her or have played with her has said, you know, she wasn't necessarily the most vocal leader previously, and now she kind of has to be because she's the glue, you know? And we know the gold mama can show up at any moment, right? So on the court, it is what it is. But I just think if there is anyone who, when you talk about getting what they deserved, if there is anyone who can actually feel like they deserve to be where they want to be and play where they want to be happy, it's certainly Jewel. Because from my perspective, it appears that she truly has given everything that you want from a star player to a franchise.
Oh, for sure. And I was not trying to suggest that she doesn't deserve. I just wonder what now would make her happy and what that would look like. You know, and so when people keep connecting her to teams like Chicago because she's from there, I'm sort of like, really, would that be? Only because, again, you know, part of, you know, at least in some of the reporting, there was, like you mentioned, she had to change her leadership style. There was some reports that maybe she wasn't fully prepared to take that on after Brianna Stewart left. And I'm just curious, like, do you want to go to a team like Chicago? We know, like, Angel and Camilla are, you know, sort of they're part of their core, right? Tyler Marsh has already talked about that being their new head coach. And be the veteran that's there leading that group. They have facilities coming, but the facilities aren't here yet. So, and when that happens, right? Like, does she want to go somewhere and wait for that? You're also going into a year where we know most people are only going to do 1-year deals. There's so many questions. So is that the right place for her? I don't know. And that also begs the question about Chicago. You know, this idea, again, the Chicago Sun-Times is reporting that, you know, they're going to be looking at a number of free agents. And while I would agree that they need to bring in some veterans there, I'm wondering, is that the right move to target like these big names right now? Or should they be focusing on developing a young core, similar to like what Indiana did to get to where they are, similar to what the Aces did? We saw that result in a championship, right? They have a nice pick too, actually. This is, I think, going to be a pretty deep draft class. Should they be going all in, trying to get like this big free agent, or draft and develop, you know?
Yeah, their drafts, they have some very icky things when it comes to their draft, because they owe some people some draft picks too, right? So it really just depends on, you know, where certain people fall and all that kind of thing, to where we know what they get to keep, what they don't, and all that good stuff. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What I do think is interesting, though, is Tyler Marsh has been known as a coach who's done very well with development and player development, right? And to your point, he's certainly made it clear that Camilla and Angel are going to be my focal point. I'm interested in seeing what happens with Kennedy Carter, right? I felt like she was very good in that system, at least the system that was being implemented by Weatherspoon. If you could really see her talent continue to shine through. I mean, Kennedy's been a dog. She's been a dog for years, since her time back at Texas A&M. So we know what she can do and how she can play. She's playing very well overseas as well. So I'd be interested in that. And I think bringing someone like a Jewell Loyd only adds to that. It continues to add that veteran leadership. It gives you another point guard that you can literally play off of. But also, they've got the money. Like, they've got the cap space to be able to really make some moves in free agency that can give them both veteran presence that they need, also can help bolster the offense. I think one of the things that was discussed over this offseason was, you know, what were the reasons that Chicago, who was so close and on the cusp of getting a playoff spot, what happened, right? And I think the first thing that some of us point to is the lack of offensive presence from some people that necessarily needed to show up in certain minutes and they weren't able to do so. So Tyler Marsh is really in a pretty good situation where he can afford to attract new players. They do have a facility that they have announced that is coming. I haven't seen any updates on that yet, so I don't know like if they've broken ground or anything just yet, but I do know it was announced. So I think he has a little bit of leverage to play with, and I think that could be something that's attractive to Jewel. And let's be honest, the last time we had a player who said they wanted to come home to Chicago was Candace Nicole Parker.
I hear you.
And Candace Parker came home and won a championship. So if there is somebody who wants to come home and make something happen for their home team, I'm only saying, let's just see how it works, because it worked well the last time.
Listen, I would love to see Jewel in Chicago, but I think Chicago would have to part, unless there's a pick swap that happens. They're going to have the number 3 pick, and that's going to be a good pick. And I'm not saying that Jewell Loyd isn't worth it. I'm just saying with it, really, we know it's only going to be for 1 year. It's 1 year. You have to prove yourself to her in 1 year, because no one's going to be signing contracts longer than a year.
Yeah.
Do you really want to give up the number 3 pick for a 1 year that may not be more than that 1 year? Those are questions above my pay grade, versus adding something to a team that almost made the playoffs. And in my opinion, really injury is what, like their offense, a lot of things needed help. Yeah. I do think Teresa Weatherspoon was a little scapegoated. Ultimately, it was injuries that really, because I think Kennedy Carter and Angel Reese don't get injured. Yep. I think they sneak into that 8th spot at the end. So a team that overachieved last season, you brought up Kennedy Carter.
Yep.
The Chicago Sun-Times is reporting that their focus is going to be probably more on Dana Evans. So that was interesting to me. We'll see. But I like the fit with Kennedy, too. We saw in the pictures that we showed earlier, Angel, Kennedy, they seem to have like a really good rapport. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot to answer in Chicago. But they have a big spotlight on them with the addition of 2 high-profile rookies, but especially Angel Reese. We know she's a very high-profile name. So they're just such an interesting team to watch. And I cannot wait to see how free agency unfolds, because we just talked through all this now, and I'm like, man, can the 21st get here? I want to start seeing movement and traction.
I need to start seeing what's going on now. Let me tell you that WNBA transaction page is going to be, we're going to scroll, and we're going to continue to scroll, and it is going to light up, because it is a lot that can happen. And I love this for this league. Like, I love that this is a thing where people are excited to know and see and wonder what will happen in free agency because of the new CBA agreement next year, because of teams, making, and one quick point, when we were talking about, in a different segment, when we were talking about, the Aces not having a general manager, one thing I can say about these teams, this cycle, is that no one has seemed rushed to make a decision, right? Yes. Every decision that has been made, it appears that they have taken a little bit of time, right? There I don't recall any head coaches being immediately fired and then a new coach being immediately named, right? It appears that they're let me take that back. Indiana with Stephanie White, right? So that was pretty quick. Fired Christie a couple days later. Stephanie White was head coach. But outside of that, I feel like teams have really taken their time. Yep. And to me, that shows that there is some intentionality with what it is that they're trying to do and trying to build. And while I might not agree with every decision that every team has made, I do respect the fact that it appears that everyone has been thoughtful in whatever their process is about why they've made the decision that they've made. I like the hire of Tyler Marsh. And a different conversation for a different day is how many male coaches that we've seen into the portal this year versus, whatever. Yes. But I like the hire of Tyler Marsh because I love his rapport with players. Yep. I've seen how he has been crucial to developing players. And I think that, adding a Tanisha Wright to your coaching staff, adding Courtney to your coaching staff, I think those things are going to also help make free agents attractive to Chicago. And to me, that is going to be critically important. I say all the time, outside of just, the players that you have there, outside of just, the facilities that you have, head coaches are also very important to what free agents think, do I want to play for this person?
Right.
Are they going to implement a style that's, critical to me, or do I need to figure out and change what I'm doing to be in their system? I think all those things are critically important. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and intentionality is going to be really important with the organization like the Chicago Sky, where I think if they have concerns about attracting free agents, that's not about your coaches. That's about how that organization has been run and what they've been doing. So let's just make sure we clear that up.
Period.
Since some of this spin has been very interesting to me. But with that said, we'll be back to talk more free agency once some signings and everything starts to happen. And I hope you will come back and join me, because I want to see how closely what we've discussed starts to align with what actually starts to play out.
Oh, for sure.
Thanks, Terrika.